Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Okay. I guess just for the record, earlier this month, I was in an accident while driving with Uber with passengers in the back. And I was in a crash on I-84. A couple of the items that I think we should investigate at some point is the appropriateness of the coverage, in this case by Uber. In particular, they have a $2,500 property deductible, which I think provides hardship for drivers. They also have $15,000 worth of injury protection, which
Yep.
I think, and we can discuss this later, but I don't really think that's going to be enough for a lot of potential crashes. They also have a loss of income coverage, which is great that they have one, but the particulars of it are more favorable for part-time drivers than full-time drivers. So in particular, it covers 70% of what you average, but there's a monthly cap, and that monthly cap is very disadvantageous to full-time drivers, because there's, like in my case, I exceed that by almost double. So those are things about the insurance.
You know what the cap is, Phil?
Yeah, $3,000 a month.
And that's all part of PIP coverage. That's all part of personal injury protection coverage.
Is it?
Yep.
It's not separate from that?
Nope.
It's within it, but it's in addition to the $15,000 for your injuries.
Yes. Yeah.
And you need to be out for at least 2 weeks, but $3,000 per month. Now you have to remember, that's like our gross revenue. That's not our net profit they're talking about. So they're capping your gross revenue at $3,000. Many of us are still making car payments, which, like in my case, would have been close to $1,000 a month. So anyway, and the other thing that I want to tack onto this which is extremely unnerving, is that my Allstate agent through the Uber coverage was very quick to inform me that it is my duty to mitigate my losses, and that they strongly recommend I rent a car from Uber so I can get back to work immediately. And then I started getting emails from Uber saying, hey, don't miss out on working. You could be earning while you're waiting for your car to be fixed, or in my case, get reimbursed for having my car totaled. And that's extremely unsettling.
That's borderline against the law, I think.
Yeah, it's like, why would Allstate tell you that?
Because if you go back to work, you void your coverages under the personal injury protection stuff that was just passed by the state legislature, which is basically $3,000 a month plus that $15,000. But if you go back to work, then you don't qualify for that anymore, right?
So Darren, what you're saying is that the personal injury coverage would have been from his insurance company or from Uber's?
From Uber's. Uber, Lyft, taxi companies after the 2021 legislative session are required to carry PIP insurance for the driver and all passengers in the vehicle. So if Uber can strategically figure out a way to get Phil behind the wheel again as quick as possible, then that limits their exposure to paying out all that money.
And Phil, who's Uber's insurance?
Allstate.
Oh, it is Allstate.
And just to be clear, Uber uses Allstate. My personal insurance is also Allstate, and the person that hit me is also Allstate.
Bill, are you sure that the personal injury protection policy is through Allstate?
Yeah, it's all through. Yes, it's all coordinated through the same representative. In my case, her name is Jen Bennett, and Oh, so Jen is the head person. There's another person that's also within Allstate that has a different name. Yes, I go through him. Yes.
Interesting.
Well, Phil, could you put this in a topic submission for the December TNC meeting? And then, it would go before Chad and Owen. If it doesn't go in a topic submission, the most you can do is share it under committee comments. But if you want action taken, it's important to at least write a topic submission.
Okay, and what in particular, which of these issues are of primary importance to you guys? Or do I just throw everything on there?
I don't know. I look for Chad and Darren. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to suggest methods for you to, move this forward. I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Okay, so I'll try my best, unless anyone wants to provide me with suggestions on whether to put them all at one or to separate them out. Maybe the first step is for me to just collect my thoughts and list bullet points of things I'd like addressed pertaining to this.
Well, I think that would probably be the best way to start. I don't know that there's a lot of stuff with insurance that's going to be very difficult for the city to be able to take up. Like the PIP, a lot of that stuff is dictated by the state of Oregon. And, the state of Oregon has a insurance board, and it falls under, I want to say Business and Consumer Affairs. I'm not 100% sure. I've been trying to figure it out. They used to have an insurance board, but that's been absorbed. So a lot of that stuff, I mean, there's some things that, yeah, we can work on. I think we've got some of those things coming up on the table, but if you put those into like a informational memo type thing to the committee, I think it can be brought into discussion, at least when we start talking about the insurance stuff next month.
Okay.
Does that seem fair?
Just to be clear, I should still do it as a topic submission, or no? Or should be a letter to you,
Mark?
an email?
Well, I guess my question to you would be, you kind of listed or mentioned maybe three things there that I heard since I've been on the call. And when you submit a topic submission, you want to include your solution or your recommendation. So I think you ask yourself, okay, problem number one, what would be your recommended solution? And if you have one, I would submit that in the topic submission, and I would go through that same exercise for item number 2 and item number 3. What Darren mentioned is, I mean, I'd have to educate myself on. I don't know how involved the city can legally get in insurance issues, because I'm just not sure how all that works. But insurance is mandated by the state. The city has requirements for companies, but has never had requirements on the amount of deductibles or anything like that. And I'm not sure if it's because they just don't or because they legally can't. I just don't know.
And the deductible issue is already a topic submission that's going to be discussed in the next full private hire transportation advisory committee. I know that, right? Tracy, is that right?
Do we do that one?
Dan,
I would have to look at, Darren, I don't remember what's on the draft agenda. I'll be able to pull it up.
I'm pretty certain that Dan Mark submitted that one as part of his insurance issues.
Let me see if I can find it.
But the other stuff that Phil's talking about has not been brought up.
Oh, the PIP and the rental car, that was one. Deductible. The thing about the police, I should leave out altogether.
Yeah, I mean,
That's an uphill battle.
They can't even stop folks from getting killed, Phil.
And, these are just observations. These aren't necessarily things,
Hey, sorry I'm out of it, guys. There's a ton of stuff going on at work. But Phil, or Mark, is there a way to add training? Because what throws me is Phil's got Allstate, Uber has Allstate, and the other driver had Allstate. So I know when you get two insurance, I've had an accident with two people in the same insurance company,
Mhm.
and it didn't work out well for me because the insurance company is just like, it's them paying themselves. But I wonder if there is a way for training or a flyer that says, hey, get a different, that rider, that TNC rider that most insurance companies offer, get that from somebody other than the insurance company that Uber and Lyft use. If they
Yeah.
both use Allstate, then can the city come up with some sort of training class or flyer or documentation that says when you're looking for insurance to drive for TNC, look for insurance companies not like to say don't go with Allstate, but go with an insurance company that is not covered by, I don't even know if that's possible.
I
If you do
thought
it the
that
other
in
way, what if-
instances like this type of thing triggered a third party investigator? I thought, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, there's something where they have to have their dealings with themselves. I don't know if it's reviewed, but there's some practices.
Go for it, Phil.
So my understanding of what's happening in my case on the liability side, my Uber representative has told me that if her Allstate counterpart representing the blue Honda, if they don't accept fault, what happens first is they each take it to a higher level within Allstate. And if they can't come to some agreement there, then it goes to an outside arbiter outside of Allstate, in which case the third cars company, Geico, would also be involved.
So I guess to end this discussion, Bill, put into the topic submission forms,
Okay.
whatever you feel pertinent that you actually have some ideas on how to address the problem with the solutions. And then, does that sound fair?
The deductible language is there, or topic submission is there.
Yeah, okay.
So
That's
I
what I
don't have
thought.
to do the deductible one.
Oh, from Dan, Mark?
Yep.
It's,
Yep.
okay.
Okay.
So that's less work for you, Phil.
So I
Hey, you
still
know
have
what?
three.
Could you or Tracy, could you send that to Phil just so he can see it? So if he disagrees with it, maybe he can do a competing one, I guess, just to make sure that they're on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me
I
see
think
if I
that'd be
can
fair.
find the copy here. I might have it here, Tracy. I was looking at it in the database, so I know that it's in there, but let me find the PDF copy of it.
Okay, so Darren, you want to move on? Next is the survey.
Yep, Phil, that's you, buddy.
So do we now have a quorum now that Chad is here?
We do.
So can I make a motion that the survey, the contents of the survey as it currently stands be approved for whatever the next step is?
Absolutely, you can.
When I printed the survey, I printed, it's 15 pages. And there are, it seems to be, is it only supposed to be 15 questions? But it says
No.
there are these opt-in questions that are
Correct.
really,
There's 15 main questions, and each one of those has expandable additional questions depending on if you wish to continue to answer those. Would that be the best way to put that, Phil?
Yes.
so then what is the next step with the survey?
I believe it would be to go to PBOT for review and to look at having the third party company.
I think that we might do this one internally. We would prepare it and get it out to you all to kind of test it because there's a lot of logic built in there. And then we would distribute it out to all the TNC drivers and turn over the results to the committee here.
Okay. Once we approve the content, and I will have one addition that seems to have been dropped out. But the next really big important step is for me to sit with whoever's actually designing it, the programmer, and figure out the logic, because this is like a smart survey. When you click on one answer, other things are going to pop up.
Right.
Is that possible, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that'll be, Gabby's probably our best Survey Monkey expert. So once we get the information in there, I think the logic's fairly easy to set up, but I think we'll do all the heavy lifting first, and then you and Gabby can connect and get a screen view going, and then we can build in the logic from there. Yeah.
Okay, and really the sooner the better, because I'm not working for at least several more weeks, so I have the time. I'd be happy to work on this as a full-time.
He's got no car to drive, so he's just sitting at home waiting for somebody to call him up and ask him to a date.
That's right.
So Phil has made a motion to approve that survey and move it forward to the next part. Chad, do you want to second that motion?
Well, Darren, first, Phil, did you say what's the addition you're making to the survey?
Question number 15 seems to have dropped out. And remember, 13 and 14 ask, would you be willing to do additional surveys? Would you be willing to do a focus group? I think what's missing was, would you be willing to attend a committee meeting, either as an observer or to provide feedback?
Is that question in a previous survey?
Yeah, and it would have been.
I'll just cut and paste it, and then Mark, I'll send you a clean version. Because I accepted a clean version, and they're all on SharePoint as well, Mark. But I'll send you a clean version, you and Gabby, and then I'll put, it's called version 6, and I'll put it on SharePoint.
Okay.
Now a second?
Seconded.
Perfect. All in favor? All right. Motion does pass.
Unanimously.
Congratulations, Phil.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. Mr. Williams, you want to talk about the postcard for outreach?
Yeah. So
which is in our it's in our chat right now, if you want to take a look at it.
yeah, I think it's ready. Oh, excuse me. To go to print. I made those changes that you all suggested through the QR code on there. And it's been approved by the communications team.
Is it in our chat? I can't get it open.
Oh, is it not in there?
There's
It takes a
file.
second to come up. You have to
Does
click
it?
on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
click
don't
on
see
it,
that.
just
I don't
goes-
see anything in the chat.
Oh, I have
Oh,
it.
you
but I
weren't
showed up
here
later.
yet, Chad, when he put it in there. So
Here, I can do it again.
It tells me it has to download.
yeah, I'm just getting a file folder. Could you let Mark screen share and pull it up?
Yep, you can screen share.
Okay. Here we go. Let's see. What do y'all see?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
It's even got a QR code. Look at that.
So that'd be the back. This will be the front. This is just, one of our standard templates. So I had to choose from, half a dozen different ones. Some of them were construction related. This is the closest I could get to private for hire.
Looks good.
Where's the goddamn taxi on there, Mark?
Well, it's right there. It's one of those new taxis that they don't have a unique color. It's right there.
Oh, that's my white Tesla.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a little label on the
So-
side of it. It says Broadway Cat. Little tiny
Yeah, I
thing.
don't doubt it since they're all different colors. Can you go back to the text?
Yeah.
So is this the only thing that I'm curious about is, were we doing this for just the TNC Drivers Committee or for both committees?
Well, initially, we decided we were only going to do this for the TNC drivers committees because Phil was going to get them in the hands of some other drivers to hand out to passengers and to drivers.
Works for me.
But we can also do one for private for hire if you want to hand them out to some taxi drivers. And I don't, we got the language approved. We just would change, any reference to TNC to private for hire.
We can talk about that. Let's talk about that in the main committee.
Yeah, I'm most excited about handing them out to riders personally. Would there be any problem with me putting a stamp to these and stamping, my name and contact information for my riders if they wanted to get in touch with me?
I don't think it would be a problem for us. It may be a problem for Uber, but I don't know what the terms of service says, or Lyft. But I know that there had been some talk about drivers handing out business cards and things like that. I'm not to promote their business. I don't know the rules.
Well, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't in a million years risk driving somebody in my car without the insurance turned on that Uber or Lyft provides. And if you do a pirated ride, you're risking your life savings. Right. So I would never in a million years. So
but I don't think there's a problem with you doing that as far as the city's concerned. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah, and again, this I love this card, and I think it could be the first step towards having a recruiting, subcommittee within the subcommittee.
How do we get them in the hands of drivers? Bill, you're not driving. Did somebody just go to the airport and put them in that office where the bathroom is at? But that's almost exclusively used by the taxi drivers.
I think one thing that can be done is we can send them out virtually to addresses we have.
Yeah.
Right, Mark?
I think so. Yeah.
But then we can task some different drivers and maybe take this to the TNC driver committee and see if Owen and different members that come around can take a handful and then just start handing them out, I guess.
You know what else? I mentioned Erica before we started. She's going to be taking around, some sort of petition or recruiting tool wherever she's going to take it. I imagine she's going to start at the airport anyway. Maybe we can give her, some packages of 10 each or 20 each to see if she can give them to any of the drivers that she's signing up.
That's a city, 200.
What?
City's paying for printing, make it 200, 300.
Oh, I'll blow through 200, in a couple of weeks, but when I start driving again.
So everybody's okay with this language? Looks good. We've got a clear path. So Mark, do you know what the printing timelines are on this?
I will get this off to my team to send to printing and distribution tomorrow. We're just going to do this in-house on basic cardstock paper. And at the size of this, it'll be 4 per sheet of paper, but they'll cut them. So if we started with 200, that's going to be 400. I would imagine that we can turn these around probably, I guess in a week at the most. We should have them the following week. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Cool.
I don't know what else printing and distribution have in their queue, but I don't see this being a big job for them.
All right.
So until I get a car, Chad, will you be the first guinea pig to carry these, or are you not driving these days?
I'm not. Yeah, I don't have time to drive right now. We're pushing out a huge software update, and
Okay.
I haven't been doing anything except for getting on servers and applying software patches.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
we appreciate your presence today, Chad.
Thank you. I was just
I
wondering.
look forward to doing it. My gosh, it's something I'm going to happily discuss with every single rider that gets in the car, and it'll provide a positive, upbeat atmosphere for the Uber or Lyft ride.
Okay, Mark, Mark, can you stop the screen share?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Chad, you
Chad?
were gonna say something?
Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna look at it again because I'll look at it on my side. The Bureau of Transportation wants to hear from rideshare drivers and anyone who relies on private for hire transportation like taxis. In my personal opinion, since this one is TNC related, taxis should go after Lyft. Private for hire information like Uber, Lyft, and taxis.
Okay.
That's just a kind of a verbiage. And then when it goes to the private for hire, the one that taxis should hand out should be exactly this, except for, join us for our bi-monthly private for hire drivers, private for hire advisory committee. And then, yeah, just for my own brain, it seems to word better. If they're focusing on, if we can't get one card to do both committees and we have to do 2 cards, it makes more sense to focus the cards towards each committee.
And then Mark, if you could, when you make that change, put taxi in bold and underline it with exclamation points behind it. That'd be great.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
So-
Bill.
So on the website that card refers you to,
Yep.
will there be a place on the website where drivers can request more cards? To request more cards, click here.
No, and I'll tell you why. We can dedicate the staff to get maybe a handful of these out to specific people, but I don't have anybody in the office that can pile these things in envelopes and mail them out. But if you said, hey, we'd like to get them at least to all the committee members, I can commit to that, but not on an ongoing basis. If that makes sense.
Okay,
Let's see how the first round goes, Phil, and then Mark and his staff can adjust accordingly as to how well you do. How about that?
all right.
That sounds fair,
Mark,
Mark?
Mark, can you share the postcard on the website? So at least a link could be shared.
I think so, yeah.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
Phil, that's an alternative.
Yeah, that's fine for now. This is kind of making me laugh in a way, because now that I know there's going to be a handful of drivers, sort of recruiting people to view these committees, it sort of reminds me of a thought I had several months back, where like each driver is recruiting a softball team from his ridership, and Phil's team is competing against, Chad's team. So it's kind of like we're all recruiting riders to provide input. So like my riders might have a certain point of view versus Guy's or somebody else's. Interesting.
Watch them all show up and they all kind of look a little bit like Phil.
Well, they all got a New York accent, right?
Yeah, there you go. All right, well then I think we're good there. So move on to number 5. Yeah,
Yep. Because we were looking at, can the city mandate, it was, I think number 5 and 6 are related. Weren't we looking at compensation so I guess we would have to first look at number 6 and see how it impacts the topic submission under item 5.
so I can give my point of view. I'm curious to hear if Mark has heard back from the city attorneys. The way I read it, it dictates how a city cannot, I guess, mandate minimum wages. And I don't know that this really falls into that. I think there's room for the city to be able to work with that under that ORS. But Mark, did you hear anything from?
The preliminary response is, I don't think we can, okay? I have a meeting with Ken. We have a regular standing meeting. Our next meeting is what's next week on? I want to say Monday or Tuesday. Let me see here. But the next meeting is next week. And that is on the agenda along with the question about, front seat.
Okay,
Whether that should be.
which is topic
industry-
number 8 on our calendar today.
Right. Right. So there's two questions that are going to come up, or I guess two questions for the city. One is for each of these. There's two questions in my mind. One is, do we have the legal authority to establish a minimum compensation? That's question number one. And then if it's made as a recommendation, the question number two is, does the city have an appetite to establish a minimum compensation in this industry? And then the same question would apply to the maximum seating. Is this a requirement that must be industry-wide? Okay. And is that something that the director is going to be comfortable implementing or recommending to city council through us, obviously? So.
Okay. So I'm not sure that it's minimum compensation as much as it's the share of compensation.
Right.
Right. And I think
Right.
there's different terminology there that may affect the arguments for and against,
Right.
but that's just me.
But you know, the problem, well, I shouldn't say it's a problem. One of the things that that I can tell you that the Bureau is going to consider, when I say the Bureau, maybe you're speaking on behalf of my boss or my boss's boss or my boss's boss's boss, or even the commissioner's office, is, how does this affect the rest of the gig economy industry? If we set an established wage minimum, even if we did, what's the impact to the rest of the industry? Beyond rideshare.
So you're saying dog walkers are going to demand 75% if they're on the WAG app?
Could they?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I do that every once in a while. That's my one big economy thing. And I like dogs, so like I'll do a dog walk once every 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm happy getting paid $20 for 10 minutes of walking. My heart rate up.
So should I put these two agenda items on the next agenda for our next meeting?
When is that? Is that next week?
No, in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I'll know
Well,
by then.
You're talking about the fees and fares subcommittee, right?
Correct.
Because these are already scheduled for the TNC driver committee meeting, right? The next one.
Well, technically, yes, that meeting's not until December, so I didn't know if you want Mark to give an update at the next.
Oh yeah,
Fees
no,
and
I think
Fairs.
that'd be great. And part of the reason is I've kind of committed to, if there is an issue with that ORS, to introduce some legislation on behalf of Bill and Chad or whoever at the state level to try and adjust it so the city feels comfortable with making those rules.
All right, I'll put it on the agenda for fees and fairs and for 2 weeks and 2 weeks.
And I don't have a lot of time to do that, so Mark, maybe you can let me know ahead of time.
I'll let you know as soon as I find out. Let me find that out.
Okay, Darren, one item left.
Third-party rides, Mr. Chad Darrington.
Yeah, I was supposed to do something with that. I haven't done anything.
Yeah, and Chad, when I saw your email, you said mid-November, and fees, private for hire, their next meeting is the 28th, and if you are going to add the agenda, we would need that by November 14th, but I don't know if that's still good for your work schedule.
Yeah, I don't know if it is either. There's 150 users and 200 servers that I got to patch. I don't know if I'm going to get it done. I think so. But I just got to get the trolling patch out to all my customers. So I'm not really thinking much about driving at the time, except for.
Well, what Camarina and I will do is we'll just check in with you. And if you have time, you do. If you don't, you don't. And then we'll take it off of private for hire agenda.
So isn't that, I thought that one was going to the TNC Drivers Committee too.
I think
Well,
it's only TNC. I didn't know it was going to private for hire.
wait, I thought you were doing what one were you doing an addendum for to go to private for hire? Camarina, can you refresh?
Third party rides, wasn't it? Wait,
Oh, that's the one for addendum? That's the one we're talking now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't remember where we were at on these.
Chad, I'll follow up with you in an email and then you just let me and Camarina know if you have time or not, okay?
The
Okay.
one that states addendum is the drivers get paid 75% of the fare.
Oh,
Yeah, I
that's
don't-
right. Thank you. Yeah, so number 5.
I don't remember what the addendum was.
It's related to 75% of the fare, but Chad, we're going to be meeting in 2 weeks, so
Okay.
nothing to do yet.
So we'll figure that out.
And Mark,
So-
that's what I was saying. This is the tracking of these things. It's been like, oh my goodness.
We need a database.
We need one committee.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been amazing. I cannot tell you how much work
Oh.
and it's really been a challenge.
Yeah, I know.
So that's all the topic submissions, right? Correct?
Yes, it is.
So if we can talk about the next steps real quick, and I see you, Bill.
Oh, I was just gonna mention real quickly, would it be possible at the bottom of the minutes each week, could we just start keeping a list of future items that we want to address? Sort of like a to-do list of things that we don't necessarily prioritize as something we're doing right now, but something we'd like to address in the future, just so we can keep that list going.
Yeah, I think we need to do is feel for you to state it in the recording and that way Camarina can capture it.
Okay.
So if you have something, let us know and we'll just capture it.
So there was, I think, 1 or 2 things that were brought up in a discussion that Phil and I had earlier today in regards to this. And I think one was drafting. Phil, feel free to correct me or add to it. I believe one was drafting some sort of letter to the labor commissioner of the state of Oregon to look at the possibility of having a hybrid status that's not necessarily employee status or independent status, but a cross in between, a third actual status of, I hate saying the word employment because you know what I mean, a worker status. And I think Phil and I both kind of felt like that it's appropriate to come from a committee like this to say, hey, you know, nobody's going to win that battle if you go one way or the other. But if there is something that's a mix in between, we'd love to have that conversation and be a part of it. Does that sound right, Phil?
Yes, absolutely.
So then, Mark, what is the best way to, because if it's not a topic submission, how else does it move forward?
Well, I mean, I think that would be a recommendation that you take to, I'm assuming would be the TNC Drivers Committee. I don't know if the rest of the industry is concerned about it, but we take it to the TNC Drivers Committee, and if they vote to proceed, then I think the chair drafts a letter and signs it.
There you go. Okay.
So
So,
does that make,
but like we were saying, these aren't things that we really want to build, you know, pummel the agenda with, just things that are things that we think are important to get to someday. If we just end up with an agenda that's empty, maybe we can slip one of those in from time to time.
Yeah. What I guess my only comment about what Phil is suggesting is that, you know, we do an agenda planning meeting, right? And
Yeah.
that's where you, Darren, and Owen get to decide, you know, okay, here are the items we're going to have on the agenda. I would hate to have something out there published that implies that the chair is going to select to continue and discuss that topic, and then they not. But I think we're putting forward the expectation that that item's going to come up. And I don't know if that's what y'all want to do.
I got you. That makes sense because it is public record and somebody from the outside looking in is gonna go, well, how come they're not working on that? They say they're going to, it's right there in writing on the website. So I do understand that. I don't know. I don't know what's the alternative. I get what Phil's saying too, is that, you know, we talk about a lot of stuff and there's good ideas in there, but it might be something that's in passing that we wish we could capture and kind of just have it there so that, you know, maybe something sparks that conversation and we're there, but you know, I understand.
Well, it can always be in the meeting summary as that this was mentioned. You just have to track it through the meeting summary.
Yeah.
There's no way of just listing them at the end, numbering them.
At the end of what? The meeting summary or agenda?
Yeah,
Either one, I don't know.
I think what he's asking for, Tracy, is to have a list of things that would forward to each agenda. So you have your agenda and then you would have this other box at the bottom of the agenda that moves forward each meeting that has a list of topics that we don't feel like need to take up all our time right now, but are things that if we had time, we could get to. And Phil, there was one other topic. What do you remember what it was that we talked about today? I'm drawing a blank right now.
Escapes my mind, sorry.
Why not just submit a topic submission and, you know, Chad and Owen add it to the agenda when they think it's appropriate? It's not like we have people submit topics and we throw them away, but, you know, we can put it in the parking lot and Chad and Owen can review it for the next meeting and decide if there's time to discuss it then. That's what I would suggest.
I will tell you that one topic is a very interesting and very big one to tackle. And I think that's why I suggested that the labor commissioner be the one to run it, because nobody's going to agree on it.
Yeah.
I would think we should be encouraging, not discouraging these ideas from getting raised, and having to do a thought out topic submission would be an obstacle for brainstorming. I want to brainstorm as many ideas as possible, put them at the bottom so that we can continue to see them and not forget about them. A reminder for the disorganized, as opposed to an obstacle.
Can you create your own list?
No.
Put it.
I see what he's saying though, but is there, I mean, other than there being an expectation, can we title it something different? Like these are not expected to move forward, but topics that we'd like to discuss at some point, and just have a continual list that's just at the bottom of the agenda.
I mean, I would suggest we don't put it on any public document so that we don't give anyone the expectation that that is going to be discussed by this committee. That's what I would suggest. I would suggest that we keep a running list for this committee, a running list for Chad and Owen, or if you've got some for private for hire, we can keep a running list in the background for you all. But I would suggest that we don't say or imply to anyone that, hey, we're going to be talking about this in the future when we feel that the time is right, because things may change, but then that expectation would be out there. That's just my 2 cents.
So it sounds like this is a list that either I or one of the committee chairmen perhaps would take on the responsibility to list, since they're the ones who are going to be prioritizing all these items anyway. I don't think Owen wants to do anything extra that he's doing.
Well, I think what Mark's saying is if we do a topic submission, it's kind of in his lap regardless.
Yeah. It stays in the database, and then when we get together to meet with Darren or with Owen and Chad, we'll go, okay, here are the topic submissions that we have. And then Chad and Owen would go, okay, there's that one again. We're not going to talk about that at the next meeting. Let's talk about it for the next meeting and consider it then. I mean, we'll keep that and we'll have a record of it.
Okay, here's an example.
Mhm.
Chad and I exchanged an email. I sent him an article about advertising on the top of Lyft or Uber vehicles and installing monitors in the back seat so that the rider can control the music. Remember that, Chad?
Vaguely,
And your response was, hell no, not on my car.
pretty much. Yeah, I'm not putting anything on the top of my car.
Okay, so I don't want to have to write a topic submission on this and what do you know, put this in. Can't we just put that as a bullet point somewhere?
I mean, Phil, if you want us to kind of keep a little parking lot list somewhere in our SharePoint server someplace, that these are the things that Phil would like to discuss in the future.
It's not just me, it's everybody else.
I mean, we can do that, but somebody's going to have to remind us to pull that list and let's review it and say, okay, let's make a topic submission for that one and that one, because I think the timing is right.
Okay, so I hear what
Yeah.
you're saying, that the
Yes.
city shouldn't keep the list. So Chad or
we can-
Darren,
we
does
can
it sound
store
like
it.
we should keep those lists? But again, we're not even
Darren, you're
encouraged to
suggesting
communicate.
Darren?
What?
No, I'm not. I'm saying if you gave us, I mean, we got a whole server that's got a lot of space. If you want us to just make a page for things we may want to talk about that Tracy can bring up every time we meet and just review it,
Tracy, it's not that you don't have to keep laughing over that, all right?
we can do that. I'm just suggesting that we don't make it public, that I feel like will imply this is something that the committee is going to
Okay.
take up.
And
All right,
that's
so
a good point
for-
to me.
for-
I wasn't aware of that, but that makes sense.
For lack of, I don't know what. Let's just, Phil, we're just gonna say that we lost on this one, and as things come up, we'll deal with them.
Okay.
I will say, keep your own list, Phil.
And, you know, each one of us, I think, has an idea of some things we might want to bring up or whatnot. I know I've got a couple things that the timing's not right, but
And I will
only
point
prob-
out
my
that
only problem
I've
is
done
if I-
topic submissions that did not get chosen for discussion.
they're still in the system, so you can advocate that those get brought up. Talk to Chad, talk to Owen, and say, hey, I put this in, and get a response. Say, is there
No,
a
I don't have
reason it
access
doesn't-
to them. I can't see what things that I've submitted. They're gone.
Well,
They
no,
get
when
emailed
you
to
fill
you.
one out, you can check a box that says, send me a copy, so you can
Yeah.
have your own copy sent to you from the city, and you keep that in your email. I know it's difficult, Phil, just stick with me here. And you know, if it's important enough to you, then they're going to review those when they set up the agenda. At the very next agenda setting meeting, Mark's going to bring that and say, hey, Phil has this one, what do you guys think? And if it doesn't get chosen, then that's when you say, well, why didn't it get chosen? If it's a timing issue, okay, I'll remind you in a month. If it's well, that we just don't like that, then take offense of it and keep that in your memory books and
Okay.
go against one of theirs someday. I don't.
But you have to think about, you know, there are certain topics that I can assure you, you know, for example, this one that you just came up with, I just don't see that getting through the director's office, to be honest with you. It has nothing to do with driver safety.
But I think that was just an example.
Okay.
So it wasn't.
Well,
it wasn't
I mean,
the
it was
topic
something we talked
itself.
about, but you
It
know,
was just the example of that's something that maybe if it came across the whole committee instead of just me going, oh no, hell no, it might be something that everybody else in the committee goes, you know what? That's not a bad idea. That if drivers want to, you know, put a big flag that comes off the back of their tow hitch that says I drive for Uber, that they may all the other drivers may love it. And just because I don't like it, but I think what Phil's saying is that's so low on the totem pole that doesn't really need to be a topic submission that we bring up. And
I don't know that there's any real laws against it. And even if there were, I mean, Uber drivers all over Portland are breaking the law about those blue Uber lights in their front window. So, you know, Bill, go ahead. You got my permission. Throw some advertising up on the roof. Get yourself a sound system.
Yeah,
No,
there's
it's the
no law.
opposite. I don't want to do that.
There's no law against it. And so if there's no law against it, the city really doesn't have a position. But if you're asking the city to require Uber and Lyft to change their, let's say, terms of service to allow drivers to do that, I would tell
No,
you.
you guys are totally misunderstanding.
Okay, then help us out.
They're going to want to force us to put advertising on our car that I don't want.
They are?
Oh, I haven't seen
Yes,
that.
that was the whole point of this.
Yeah, I
They
think,
might,
totally
they're doing that in
misunderstood.
some
that's-
places.
now that's different. That's different. That's something that would definitely be brought up. I mean, if they brought that to the table, that's something being forced to do that. I
Well,
guarantee
So
you.
perhaps I'll find the article that I had sent to Chad and I'll forward it to you guys.
Darren, how's that handled in the taxi industry? Because I've seen, I don't know, I'm not sure if I've seen it in Portland, but I've seen taxis all the time with advertising. How's that done?
We get hit all the time from, and usually it's coming from advertising companies that want to put little reader boards on the back or the
Right.
thing on the top. And our response has always been, no, the only advertising that's going to be on our cars is our company.
Right.
Now we do have the little pay screens in the back seat that run stupid ads that we have no control over, that, the drivers have gotten so good at just shutting it off because they hear it 500 times in a day.
Right.
And those are never updated. And those are probably going to go away soon. But that's not to say that we've got the freedom. If we wanted to, we could put boards up all over our cars if we wanted to, as long as it's illegal based on ORS
Right.
code of,
Right,
proper
so that's-
vehicle usage.
So let me ask the question in a different way. If a company came along to Radio Cab and said, hey, listen, I'll pay you $5 million. I want every cab to have this advertising on it. Would you and could you, with the agreements that you have with your drivers, require them while they're working to have this advertisement on their car?
That would have to be it would have to get through our board of directors, and there would be some abstaining. But yeah, I mean, the company dictates how the cars are to look.
Right.
And
Right.
this is what's going to be happening with Lyft. They're going to continue looking for additional sources of revenue that they don't have to share with the drivers.
Well, and I think they would make a huge mistake by forcing all vehicles to do that, because they would lose half their drivers. Now, if they had some sort of incentive program for Chad to put up a big, reader board up on the top of his Prius, talking about greatest barbecue in Oregon, and he said, well, I don't want to do that. And they said, we'll pay you $50 a month. That I could see them doing, but I think they'd have a very hard time forcing anybody to do that stuff. It'd just be a bad business decision on their part.
I found it, Phil, and I shared the article in the chat for anybody who wants to look at it.
Okay.
Some of the article is also Lyft is just putting their ads on other things like the city bikes, and I know we have the Nike bikes, but in other places it's by city, and it's the city bikes.
Chad, can you also send that as an email to the parties here so they have it after this is over?
Yeah.
Bill, it'll also be in the meeting summary, and Camarina will create a live link in the meeting summary.
Okay. So again, this was just an example of things. So I hear what everybody said, and I'm fine with it not putting in the agenda or the minutes. But any of these other ideas that we brainstorm, that's fine. I'll either keep my list or whoever is the committee chairman.
Here's an option, I think, that's fine. I mean, if the committee chooses to have a discussion about this publicly without taking any action, there's nothing in the bylaws that says you can't do that. You can have a conversation and solicit feedback, and you can even solicit feedback from the public. But more importantly, you would be able to publicly say to Lyft and Uber, we're not in favor of this. If you're considering this for this market, we're not in favor of it. And it doesn't have to be a topic submission. It could just go on the agenda as a discussion item for no action, no consideration. And Owen and Chad can dedicate as much time as they want to it. There's nothing that says you can't do that.
Okay. So we're all getting this email. If time allows, maybe I'll bring this up next meeting. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I for my own thing, I wish that there was some not public working space. I know that Mark and Tracy, you have a SharePoint between you guys. I for my own brain, I forget stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. There would be helpful for the committees to have a non-public forum or SharePoint or repository where we could keep some of this stuff that maybe I write something down, and if I don't email it to Owen or I don't email it to Phil or to Darren, I've spaced it the next day.
Yeah. We could set up something. I mean, people do that in Google all the time with, with access permissions, and people do that in Google, what is it, Drive or something like that. I see people doing that all the time. So I mean, committee could easily set up something that's only available to committee members. They have to be invited to it. Once someone sets it up, they invite other people to it.
Yeah, I'll look into
You're muted,
look into
Darren.
finding out what to do.
That would be a great place to be able, for like a driver, to be able to post screenshots of things pertaining to topics we've discussed, right? So if I get a request from someone whose name is V without a photo, right, that's something that would support.
Yeah, the only caveat to that is because of public information laws, that it has to be made available upon request. So it's not like it's a top secret little group that we all have.
Okay.
So I don't know if we have to make that known that it's there.
I think that if we got a request for it, and it's related to the work of this committee, we would have to turn over whatever documents are requested, plain and simple.
That's not a problem, right? I don't think we have anything.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I just want to make sure that that was understood. That
Okay.
because I took my training class on how to be a good member of a committee for the city.
Right
Ooh, me
on,
too.
Darren.
I didn't.
I did my
Yes, I
other
know,
training
Chad.
too.
I started and then I forgot about it.
All right, so now that we're kind of on a page with this and have some movement ahead, let's move to the last item, which is adjournment. But with that being said, Mark, if you could hang out for just a minute, I wanted to really quickly throw a couple things at you. So
Okay.
sorry, Tracy or Camarina, who's ever gonna stay behind for a minute.
Okay, now last time your minute was like 40 something minutes. You go,
It's not gonna be 40 minutes. And
okay,
just, all you gotta do is say, okay, Darren, shut the hell up and we'll
no,
go.
I'm just gonna go on mute and get some other work done, okay?
All right.
And you two can stay on. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey,
So yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate it.
Stop recording.
Oh, good. I'll do that. Let me see where
okay, and I'm leaving too, right?
Yep, thank you.
okay, hold on, you guys. I have to go back to my full screen. Mark, I really appreciate that reminder.
And don't laugh at me after I hang up.
I feel I couldn't help. I just couldn't see Darren going down to Salem doing his lobbying work with making your little list.
Look, I'm
That
not
wouldn't
a
happen.
techie, and whatever. I was just in a high-speed accident. Give me a break.
His
Yeah,
brain
yeah.
hasn't fully stopped jiggling yet.